Good evening, ladies and gentlemen from Manila. I'm Manny Mugato. I'm hosting the monthly podcast for the Asia Pacific Institute Insights. And for tonight's edition, well, it's morning in the US where my two colleagues are, Colonel Dencio Acop in Boston and Rodney Haleco in Washington. So maybe let's welcome them together because today we have a very interesting topic to discuss. It's the U.S. reliability as a security partner in the Indo-Pacific region. Well, for one thing, the U.S. Pacific Commander, Admiral Samuel Paparo, was in Manila in the first week of August to sign the annual 8-star memorandum to agree on a number of the activities for 2027 for the US and the Philippines. That includes Balikatan, Salaknib, Kamandag, and other activities. And hopefully they continue to have more than 500 activities next year. And along with the visit of Admiral Paparo, the U.S. War Undersecretary Colby was also in Manila for the first leg of his four-nation Southeast Asia wing, where he reaffirmed the U.S. Security alliance with the Philippines, that he also voiced assurances for the allies in the region that America will remain engaged in the region and it will not abandon.
But as I was just saying, starting here in Manila is deeply fitting. The Philippines is our oldest mutual defense treaty ally in Asia, and we share a deep and abiding historical connection, in addition to our profound alignment of strategic interests. From Manila, I will be traveling onward to Jakarta, Bangkok, and Phnom Penh. As in Manila, I intend to deliver a clear message that is at once both realistic and perhaps bracing, but also reassuring, that America's interests are more engaged than ever in the Indo-Pacific, and that we at the Department of War are concentrated on ensuring those interests are stoutly defended.
However, the words were hollow because after that, U.S. President Donald Trump decided to scale down the number of activities in South Korea after Seoul declined the U.S. offer to help them in Iran. At the same time, President Trump also pulled out USS George Washington in the Pacific and moved it to the Middle East to replace the Abraham Lincoln. So with that, is the U.S. still a reliable ally in this part of the region? Maybe we can start with Colonel Dencio Acop.
Thank you, Manny. Good morning and good evening. Yeah, well, what I can say about that is that maybe it's also nice to recall back in history, World War II. For instance, we have if you for those of us who remember, or students who read their history, if we recall Adolf Hitler, especially towards the end of the Second World War, when he rejected the advices of his seasoned military commanders. And I think we all know what happened to Germany after that. Germany began losing. Initially in the war, they were of course winning, Blitzkrieg and all that, and of course with the entry of the United States into the war. But my point is that sometimes we have political leaders, and I'm now trying to make a similar comparison, not exactly, of course, but a similar comparison between President Trump and Adolf Hitler, for instance, or the likes of political leaders who, for their political reasons, of course, make the decisions that they do, disregarding the advices of their uh, I, I emphasize seasoned military commanders, because these are commanders who are used to fighting wars from a very realistic standpoint, meaning they are the people on the ground. And so what I'm seeing today is that, as a former military officer, is that the again there there are some uh, basic strategic principles that are being violated, I think. One of which, for instance, is the principle of not scattering your forces too thinly across the globe, especially today. We just read reports about how the United States has lost a lot of its munitions because of the war in Iran. And now there was an article I read which said that it may take a 2-year sprint for the United States to make up for these spent munitions, and hard to make munitions. So they might follow the lead of Ukraine in shifting to more inexpensive drones. But this shifting of an aircraft carrier from one location, strategic location, to the Middle East, and then scaling back American forces from South Korea just because South Korea refuses to lend support to the United States in Iran, right? There's a lot of classic transactional Trump leadership, right? So military pieces are being moved like pawns to support political decisions by the American president. The American president might think that that may serve some purpose. Maybe, of course, a lot of it is political and economic even, but also there are things that are very unpredictable, because, as we all know, even social, political, economic situations can, if not quickly, gradually escalate into possible military conflict down the road, right? So I think that is really what, uh, well, to military veterans like myself, we kind of always have that reality at the back of our minds, that when all of these political decisions and their consequences escalate because of unforeseen circumstances or consequences, because really, even if strategic analysts, uh, public administration analysts, and political policy makers make their informed decisions, ultimately it is a executive leader like President Trump, for instance, who makes the final decision, right? And even with the most informed decisions, there are still unforeseen circumstances that can come about. And how much more if you have a political leader with a strong personality like President Trump, and perhaps, and he's not even a considered an authoritarian. I mean, he operates not within an authoritarian space, unlike Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin, right? And yet he's able to get his way. We see a lot of decisions being made that really uh, that seem to be personalistic on the part of the U.S. president. He probably listens to the advices, but we see the resulting executive action to be unilateral on his part. I don't see a lot of collegiality in the way that decision making is being done in the United States right now, and its impact on the U.S. economy and the world, of course, are very apparent now, with the effects, for instance, of the Strait of Hormuz. We see inflation rising in America. I mean, the recent 50% being slapped on Canadian goods, diba? All over the world, there's this the effects of the tariff wars. So these are all effects of the decisions being made uh, by the president, and focusing now on the Indo-Pacific region, as you pointed out in the recent in the developments in the recent weeks, Manny. Even if the Trump lieutenants have been traveling back and forth between Washington and the Indo-Pacific region, and each one of them, whether it is the state secretary, the defense secretary, or even the assistant uh, uh, secretary of war, keep on mouthing reassuring allies in the region. But the actions of the commander in chief, of their leader, seem to do otherwise. So, well, therefore, what I'm saying is that there is a inconsistency between what the people of the president are saying to reassure allies in the region and what the president is actually doing. So, to me, that will continue to make allies in the region be doubtful and always have this reservation.
Mm.
And it unfortunately also it might be emboldening China and even North Korea now, right? Because I think, for example, in the recent development in between the United States and North Korea, President Trump seems to be, because of his personalistic style of leadership, he seems to be pressuring ally South Korea, just because South Korea refuses to support the United States in the Middle East, that I can go as far as talking to your enemy, and so there's a lot of it's hard for me to really rationalize sometimes if there is even a rational order to the way that U.S. policy making and decision is being done right now. It seems to me that there's a lot of scattered, and I think that, to me, that is a sign of disorganization, incoherence in policy execution, and I don't think that will be good for America in the long run, and even its allies in the long run also, as whether it is NATO or the allies in the Indo-Pacific. So I think it's well and good for allies to just uh, do whatever they need to do, but not put all their eggs in one basket in the United States. I think that will be if I were an allied leader, that would be how I would think, uh, and just play along, but not rely too much on the United States, perhaps, but probably strengthen my alliances with other strong nations like the NATO countries, Canada, Japan, etc. Those are my thoughts on the matter, Manny.
Okay. Sige. How about you, Rodney? Do you share the
Yeah,
same
our
thoughts
question
of
is,
Colonel Ako?
yeah, our question is yung we are asking about the US reliability, no? The because I think for the first time since the US withdrew from Vietnam and from the Philippines in the 1990s, there is a very large cloud over how the U.S. commitments in the Asia Pacific region is being seen by the countries within the region, no? in the Pacific region. Kasi, like for example, Pew Research, no, they surveyed 36 countries earlier this year, and the survey showed that for the first time in more than 2 decades, no, more people favored China than the U.S. No? More people were viewing China more favorably than the U.S. That's how the Pew Research came out, no? And among the Asian countries, the Philippines, India, Japan, and South Korea are the only ones that are siding with the U.S. Other countries like Pakistan, Indonesia, and Malaysia, our neighbors, no, in the area, especially Indonesia and Malaysia, are favoring China. No? So that's a shift in public sentiments over a period of more than 2 decades. There's another survey from Singapore, a Singapore think tank, which concerns the 11 ASEAN countries. No? And when asked to choose sides, a narrow majority leaned towards China, the opposite of results the past several years. No? So more than half of the respondents said the U.S. global leadership now is unpredictable. No? Majority see China as the dominant economic power in their respective countries. So when we talk about the reliability of the U.S. commitments sa Indo-Pacific, no, especially against China, we have to take into consideration how the countries themselves, no, how the people in the neighborhood see that commitment, and they are not impressed with what is happening now in the region. No? I will expound siguro. I will go further dun sa sinabi ni Colonel Acop na medyo scattered, no? Scattered yung US, no? That is because their national defense strategy, di ba sabi nila they would concentrate on the Western Hemisphere, di ba? Hindi man lang na-mention nga doon sa declaration nila yung China at saka yung Asia Pacific, no? Parang silent, they were silent about that. So doon pa lang medyo may nakaduda na, no? And although ito nga there has been a parade of top U.S. defense and security officials that have come to Manila, and I've been doing rounds of Asia na they are trying to assuage that growing sentiment na hindi nakafocus ang US sa China threat, no? Dito sa Asia Pacific. And I think the events are bearing that out, no? Because right now, the majority of the US forces are concentrated dun sa gera nila with Iran, no? And mukhang inconclusive, di ba? Since February, they've been attacking Iran on and off, no? On and off. And walang resolution yung conflict na yon, and it's not resolution in sight. It has boiled down. It has evolved from the elimination of the Iranian nuclear threat to reopening the Strait of Hormuz. No? So, I think what Colonel Acop said, that the U.S. is scattered, U.S. forces is because of walang strategy. No? It has no coherent strategy. That's why they are, President Trump is an indicator of just how incoherent the U.S. military activities are now. So there is a question of will the U.S. meet its commitments? That is a question that is increasingly being asked by the many countries in the Indo-Pacific region. And as the surveys will show, the the US does not enjoy the confidence in many of these areas, in many of these countries that are surrounding, that are part of the Indo-Pacific and surrounding China. So right now, parang nakafocus dito sa Philippines and Taiwan. And if the US is slackening, no? We have the at least we have a small consolation that Japan appears ready, no? Appears ready to fill whatever void, no? Yung mga shortages, gaps in defense, no? That the US might be unable or unwilling to fill right now. Because sabi nga ni Colonel Akop, may problema US sa stockpile nila eh. Nauubos dun sa Iran yung yung mga munitions nila. So like for example in Ukraine, they have enough Patriot launchers but they don't have the missiles themselves eh. Hindi ma-fill up pa ng US yung nagamit nilang munitions dun sa Iran, which is again another indication na wala strategy ang US. Parang
Okay.
ano
So,
lang sila eh, parang rigamalol lang na nga, pukpok lang ng pukpok eh.
so anyway, no, well, the U.S. influence and power in the Indo-Pacific is about to decline because of the war in Ukraine and Iran. The other like-minded countries are stepping up, no, like Australia and Japan, no, and Canada and New Zealand. However, these are the countries that have smaller military force than China and the US. But what is good is that there are a number of partners now willing to help and step up. No, for instance, Japan is slowly rearming itself by converting their helicopter landing ships, no, to aircraft carrier, mini aircraft carrier by putting in the F-35 fighters. And at the same time, they have started building missiles and surface combatants that Australia has already acquired. No, I think that's the replacement for the Abukuma that will be given to the Philippines. 5 Abukuma destroyer escorts. So Australia is also stepping up by having more exercises in the Philippines. And I believe even during the time of Colonel Akop in the military, Australia has been the biggest source of our education and training through the Defense Cooperation Agreement, the DCA, you know, the old DCA that we have. The more courses, more technical skills are being trained by Australia in our armed forces, especially the Air Force and the Navy. So these are good developments, and hopefully this will continue. No, Canada is helping in the training of our Navy men to operate submarines. No, and India is also offering submarine training. South Korea is also offering submarine training. So by the time we acquire our first conventional submarine, we have more personnel who are capable of operating these electric diesel submarines. No? So my question is, do you think that the Philippines can rely on our mid-level powers to counter China's activities in the West Philippine Sea? Let's start with Rodney.
Okay. I think ako, if I were to be asked, no, I would prefer to look more closely at the alliances that are forming, no, by this mid level powers, no. Like for example, yung Australia has suspended yung order ng nuclear submarines, no? With the US na sinulot ng US from France, no? But apparently the US is having trouble fulfilling that contract. So medyo nag-iisip-isip na naman yung Australia. And instead, Australia is buying its new warships from Japan, no? So, yung itong mga itong mga mid-level powers na to, they are talking among themselves na how to strengthen yung security. So, the US, because of what I see as a strategic blunder, in committing the bulk of its resources towards an inconclusive war with Iran, will be placing itself farther and farther away from relevance as far as building a deterrent, no? A credible deterrent against China. So nagkakaroon ng gaps eh. There are big gaps now that the US can only blame on themselves, no? And these are being filled by the mid-level, no? Mid-level powers like Japan, Australia, India, Canada. Nag-uusap-usap itong mga to to form a parang to fill the gaps, no, that are being left right now by the US. I have no doubt, no, that eventually the US will be able to fill those gaps, no. Siguro we may have to wait until after the Trump administration before we see that. Pero yung right now, ito yung mga countries that are helping build that ring, no? Yung first island chain na yan, sila yung bumubuo ng kadena para i-contain yung China, no? Because they cannot allow China to break through sa Pacific. That would be a threat to both China, to both Japan and Australia, no? Because they face the prospect of being flanked by China if China is able to break through sa first island chain. So, and there is also the ASEAN mismo, no? The 11 countries. Nag-uusap-usap pero like for example yung right now yung Philippines is the alliance anchor, no, as far as the containment of China is concerned. But there is also Singapore, no? Ito yung the US has very deep security relations with Singapore and Vietnam, no? Of course, Vietnam is strategically important in containing China because it's directly in the mainland, no? It's connected there. And Indonesia is beginning to feel the threat from China, no? Although hindi siya directly related sa South China Sea, but there is Natuna Islands nila, medyo nag-encroach na rin yung China doon. So medyo nawo-worry na rin yung Indonesia. So I think right now the only turn, if we may call it, yung Malaysia, no? Because mukhang umaangal sila dun sa build-up ng US sa Philippines eh. Especially in Balabac Island, no? Mukhang na medyo nako-concern si Prime Minister Ibrahim about the build-up of the US facilities in Balabac, which is just 50 miles away from Sabah, no? Na we all know the history of the Philippines and Sabah. So medyo na, I guess that is their worry. And right now, it kind of suggests that they are gravitating more towards China than the US. So that's fly in the ointment. So that's basically that's I think the gist of what I see is the uh, emerging alliances, no? Na it will be for the meantime shifting away from a over reliance on the US and towards more of self-help, no? Itong mga mid-level powers.
Okay, so Colonel Akop, is that a fair assessment of the situation?
Yeah. I agree with what Rodney just said. Definitely, and for some time naman, we have seen this happening already, being done by the Philippines. Definitely, I believe that alliances, the more alliances, especially with mid-level powers by the Philippines, is always a plus when it comes to national defense and security. And the exercises, those are well and good, and I think the Philippines is definitely on the right track in terms of participating more and more in these exercises, which increase interoperability. That's the key word. By interoperability, it's like a simulation exercises of uh, uh, of a uh, of a imagined war scenario. And if these varied militaries can work together in order to be effective, cohesive as a unit against a common enemy, and so all of the exercises participated in by the Philippines with its allies in the region, and its ongoing training programs with allies, even with the U.S., Australia, and other countries. Even if these are not just the exercises, but sending officers or enlisted personnel to these countries for education and training, they all contribute towards that goal, right? When these uh, people in uniform come back and serve in the armed force of the Philippines, they contribute whatever they learned from that training, and so these all add up uh, into the effectiveness of a future interoperability, especially when real emergencies occur. So I think China, that is why China is of course worried whenever they see many of these exercises happening, especially those that are happening right in their backyard, right, or front yard, like the South China Sea. Siyempre, they become concerned because they know what that means. When the militaries of Australia, for instance, can operate with the AFP, and the AFP with the Defense Force of Japan and all the others. So parang the more that their forces can operate smoothly, then that should worry China, because even if it's a big military, but with all of these smaller militaries coming together and able to put their strengths together and minimize their weaknesses, they can be a effective counterforce to China, and that worries China. Not to
Mm.
mention, of course, the Philippines' alliances with faraway allies like the United States or even the NATO countries. So yes, definitely. And like I said earlier, that's good because the Philippines need not put all its hope in one basket, the United States lang. So of course, it's good for the Philippines to talk to everyone who is willing to help. After all, there is a mutual interest that is being advanced by all of these efforts, right? All countries who believe in the international rule of law. Uh, I I also have to say that the thing that unites the Philippines with its allies is that it's not only the threat being posed by China, which is basically China is asserting its way of life onto the world because it's a communist country, but its economy has grown so big, right, that it feels that its expansion economically and in other areas is being curtailed by the liberal order put up by the United States since World War II. So it feels that it's being curtailed by that international order. That's why it's challenging it because it 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 claims that its expansion cannot be fully realized because of this in Western-led international order. So at least it's asserting its dominance in the Asian region. And even that, nahirapan nga sa, di ba, kasi even in the Asian region, Indo-Pacific, the presence of Western powers is there, the United States and the others. So it that's why unang-una, by uniting itself with Taiwan and then asserting its claims in the South China Sea, that is one way that the China solidifies its own order in this part of the region. And which reminds me, in the earlier discussion about yung sabi ni Rodney about the Trump administration reasserting the Monroe Doctrine in the Western Hemisphere, especially in South America. That is what the Monroe Doctrine is. That is what China is doing in its own region, and what the U.S. is trying to do, reassert in its own region. But really, I think in the scheme of things right now, it is China that is ahead of the ball game than the United States. Why do we say that? Because right now, it is China that is the challenger, right? It's challenging the reigning power, the United States, the Thucydides trap. So right now, China is the one that is progressive because because of the size of its economy, it's asserting itself. It is now the United States that is reactive. Baliktad eh. It is now reactive. That is why there is a disconnect, disorganization in the way that the United States is reacting right now, because it does not know how to react to this onslaught that China is into. Sanay is a rule of law, eh. But now China is kind of in a way effective in its challenge to this rule of law, because it's able to still operate with this international order, but actually undermining it. Diba? For example, it does not even believe in the United Nations, in the UNCLOS. It's panalo na tayo sa 2016 arbitral ruling. It ignores it. So the only reason why the Philippines and its allies are reacting the way we are reacting, right, is because the world is reacting to China, because China, it happens to be the biggest economy right now. And it's into everything economic in the world. That's why hindi natin maiwasan yung China eh. But politically, ideologically, we cannot really abide by China. Why? Because China is a communist country. It doesn't really believe in the core beliefs that many countries in the world, especially the non-communists, are into, right? So yun yung malaking disconnect dyan eh. So even if we say that we can come together and live peacefully together, interact economically, socially, politically together, but those differences will remain because they are core differences. So I guess for as long as everything does not lead to war, I think all countries are kind of happy with that, so long as it does not lead to war, right? But right now, what we are seeing is that, nevertheless, I think strong countries also feel that they cannot be curtailed in their growth, and so countries that are strong, that are powerful, they are using their militaries to boost that claim. So you have China, you have the United, you have any other country that asserts its political will, its growth, using its military. But the militaries are being used as backup. Hopefully, you will listen to me because I have a strong military. I can back up my diplomacy with my military. We can go to war and I might win, but we need not do that. Let's reason. China is doing the same thing too, and it's. I just posted sa social media nga yung this thing about the strategic tools that China is doing in order to win the war by not necessarily having to go to war. It's using everything else. Yung mga ganun ba, Manny and Rodney? So, I think that's what's happening to the world right now. What is worrisome, I think, is an alleged talk about using nukes against Iran by the United States. Sometimes I get that. I get those. Na some for example, some I think former officers of the United States military, or even current. I mean, definitely former ones. They say that they overhear talk, about considering the use of nukes in Iran, against Iran. Yung mga ganun, I think those are worrisome. If there's even talk like that, maybe they don't really mean it. Maybe they mean it as a psychological tool, but nevertheless, it is very dangerous. And unfortunately for the United States right now, President Trump is the chosen leader because of he's being used as a counter to especially China and the and the dominance of too much liberal progressiveness within the United States. Yun naman yun eh. Kaya the Republican Party chose President Trump, right? But also there's a downside to that. But because of Trump's personality, a lot of the things that they're doing now is kind of backfiring. You can see that economically, inflation, tariff wars, etc. There's no end to it. Strait of Hormuz, there's no end to it. So the world is at this point wherein all of these balls are rolling, initiated by President Trump. We don't really know where it's going. All I can say is that it doesn't seem to be good. It doesn't seem to be leading to anything good because sabog I think President Trump is just parang it's almost a foreign policy of Trump personality, and then bahala na what happens. It's yung danger na nakikita ko as a simple person trying to analyze things. Parang it's hard to and I think even the policy and all of the policy people in the United States are like, they seem to be, kumbaga sa kwan parang all of the experts are telling this guy, oh, dapat ganito, ganyan, but this guy doesn't listen. So that is where the United States is. And so on the other side of things, kung ikaw yung Philippines or any other country, definitely you will not take Trump seriously. You will just wait for him to depart power, and in the meantime, you damage control by strengthening your alliances with other countries.
Okay. So
may ano yan, may tawag diyan yung Trump doctrine. Ang definition ng Trump doctrine, bahala na si Batman.
Yeah. Parang ganun di ba? Ang nangyari Ang hirap mo, even if you rationalize, hindi mo malaman kung saan papunta, wala eh.
Yeah, bahala na si Batman.
Transactional kasi Trump, di ba? Very transactional.
At saka very parang moment by moment, ganun lang.
So anyway, this goes to my third question. Is there a need for an Asian NATO that U.S. Reliability is in question? Because there are some people who are proposing that Japan, Australia, Philippines, Canada, New Zealand, and South Korea form its own NATO organization in Asia to defend themselves. What do you think about that proposal, Colonel Ako?
I think dun papunta yung, I think the current alliances, the separate alliances that the Philippines has with its allies in the Indo-Pacific region, I think it only takes one more step to bring all of those alliances together. And when that happens, that is the Indo-Pacific NATO that you are talking about, Manny. It only needs to a mechanism to connect all of these disparate mini alliances within the Indo-Pacific region, and if somehow they are put into one, that will become the Asian or Indo-Pacific NATO. Kaya lang they will have to come up with a mechanism wherein, of course, all of the countries and leaders agree, just like what NATO has. But I think it's very possible, and I think it's leading towards that in the near future. I think they only need to talaga have a uniting mechanism, and I think China, I think, anticipates this, and this is why it's trying to up the ante in the South China Sea, meaning to say it's trying to, kasi divide and conquer ang China, di ba? It is to its interest to divide and conquer. So itong Asian NATO that we're talking about, it's the opposite of this one. If it unites all of the allies against China, that is precisely what China doesn't want to happen.
So Rodney, your take?
Yeah, I think what we have now is the closest thing that we can get to in terms of an Asian NATO, no? Remember, Mogs, di ba dati may Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, di ba? Pero na-dissolve yun, no? After the Cold War, nawala rin yung Seattle na yun. And I don't think a NATO-like organization can be formed for the immediate Asia-Pacific region, because number one, iba-iba yung natin yung mga interest ng mga countries dito especially in Southeast Asia, no? Sa ASEAN lang nga, I doubt malabo na maka-form ka ng security alliance among the ASEAN mismo, no? Because there are many factors, no? Kasi like for example, tayo, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei, tayo may overlapping claims sa South China Sea. The other ASEAN countries don't have that claim. Wala silang problema doon sa South China Sea, basically. And almost all of us, almost all of the countries are dependent on trade sa China, no? Pero which is forcing these countries to choose whether they would go China all the way or US all the way, or in between, no? I think what will happen, Mogs, is that each country will have to determine, no, the balance. We cannot be values-wise, no? Medyo may inconsistency na kaagad doon, but still we cannot ignore yung economic clout ng China. The Philippines will still have to deal with China, but in a balanced way, no? Hindi katulad ng other countries like Cambodia, may perhaps, or Laos, na talang all the way sila all in sila sa China, no? But there will be individual decisions to be made by these countries, and I think the Philippines, we have the Philippines is basically the anchor of a security alliance. Any security alliance will have to be by geography and by force of geography will have to be anchored in the Philippines, kasi nasa middle tayo ng ng path ng China, because we all know that China is trying to break out sa Pacific. We are in the path, no? The Philippines is in the path of China. So inevitably, it has to be the anchor of a security alliance. So what we have now, like the Philippines already has a coalition. It has already successfully built a coalition with the US, Japan, Australia, Canada, even France, no? Meron na tayong and of course the US has its own axis with Singapore, no? May sarili silang, it's more heavily commercial than security. But I think that is the basic structure. Yan na yung limit, I think, ng something like NATO, no? And I doubt it if ever man, no, na we can draw in additional members to that envisioned NATO-like alliance. Mahirap ma-enforce mo yung rules kasi wala namang enforcement mechanism ang ASEAN, for example, no? Saka sino mag-agree sa Article 5, no? Medyo malabo yung Article 5 na yan because may mga close relations with China eh. So doon pa lang I think medyo malabo yung maka-form ka ng something very identical to NATO. Baka variation. It's parang siguro mongrel NATO, no, ang mangyayari dito sa Asia, sa Asia area. May security, may agreements, pero walang Article 5. Walang the only key determinant there would be a China aggression, no? Something similar to Russia and Ukraine. Pag nangyari na yon, I think by force of common interest, common security priorities, magbaband together kung ano yung coalition that we have now. I doubt kung sasali pa yung ibang countries like Laos
Cambodia.
or Cambodia diyan.
Yeah. So anyway, before we end, no, meron lang akong gustong itanong because this has been in the news for some time when former Congressman Michael Romero had his picture with the Armed Forces Chief of Staff General Antonio Navarrete, no, displaying all the awards and decoration he had earned as a service officer for only 4 years. Take note, he was only a reserve officer for 4 years in 2021. Oh, sorry, from 2021 up to 2026, so about 5 years. 5 years siyang reservist, and then he was already promoted to Brigadier General, and with all the decorations on his chest. Of course, we know that Colonel Akop has done a lot of comments on this issue, but we may know from Rodney his 2 cents worth of remarks on General Romero's numerous awards.
Yeah, Mogs, I closely follow si Colonel Akop as far as the Romero issue is concerned kasi he is more knowledgeable about the military traditions, no? Pero from a layman's point of view, as a dating kumo-cover sa defense, medyo unusual pa rin yun, ano? I mean, I can understand why the AAP would be so generous for someone like as influential as former Deputy Speaker Romero, no? Siya yung I think he was responsible for arranging the financing for the budgetary support for 4 na C-130s, no, for the Philippine Air Force. Tatlo. So that's the reason why he has that airman's badge, I think. Pero yung the Gold Cross is crossing the line, so as far as I'm concerned, no? That is a award reserved for feats of valor, no? And wala naman sa history yata ni former Congressman Romero yung sinasabi na feats of valor. So I mean it demeans, no? As a casual observer, it leaves a bad taste. Especially naawa ako doon sa mga sundalo na namatay o kaya nalumpo. Just tapos ang kapalit lang noon yung Gold Cross, no? That's yan ang value ng medal na yan, na even parang it's consolation, if I don't know if you can call it that, but it's a reward, no, for their valor. And to give it for ceremonial purposes, para lang isuot, no, masuot ni General Romero yung medalya niya sa dibdib niya, parang kalabisan na. It's if the report is true, na talagang binigyan siya ng Gold Cross, kasi pwede naman na bumili lang siya ng ribbon, nilagay niya doon without official documentation. Pwede rin nangyari yun, di ba? Yan ang problema kay Romero, hindi sa AFP. Pero kung binigay ng AFP yan, ang problema na sa AFP. They have to find out paano nangyari yon, di ba? Sa akin yun lang naman. It has the practice has to stop. I can understand why it happened, pero it has to stop, no? Hindi natin alam kung ilang pang binigyan niya. Dami ng mga reservists na di ba? Yung mga artista ng mga minsan may makikita rin ako mga ribbons doon pero I don't know kung talagang earned nila yan. So, yeah.
So, Colonel Ako, what can the AFP and DND do to stop this practice, no? Parang naabuso na
Yeah. At, naman I think nandun naman yung mga rules and regulations. The DND AFP only need to implement it, di ba? Implement it without favor. Yun lang naman. I think yun ang problema. I think we have all the rules in place. Hindi problema yun I think it's the practice that needs to stop. Siyempre, kamukha nga ng sinabi ni Rodney, siyempre, kahit na ganun pa man ang hindi naman ibig sabihin na ang kapalit nun yung kamukha nung binigay kay Romero. Hindi lang yun. If you look at yung dami, I've never seen a reservist na I mean, masyadong OA naman yun, sobra. I can understand yung siguro 2 layers of ribbons and that's fine. Pero yung gano'n na para bang well, I have to say, as a former military person, it's an insult. It's a huge insult. And it's very demeaning. Para mong sinabi na walang kwenta yung mga sundalo natin. Parang it's very demeaning to the men and women who fight our wars and even die for it. Parang gaganon-ganon nilang natin. So what kung nagbigay ka kahit nga nagbigay ka ng C-130 So, does that mean that babawiin mo yung magandang ginawa mo dahil bababuyin mo yung yung honors and traditions ng AFP? Parang it's too much. We kung sino man yung nag-aalaw ng mga ganyan, whether they're individuals or institutions in our country, it's too much. Parang we are now into things wherein we sacrifice things of greater value just for personal interest, and that's dangerous. And it's also happening at a time when we know that we are being infiltrated by agents of an enemy that are into threatening our sovereignty. So parang there's no more cohesion or united whole of nation approach to this thing. Parang kanya-kanya na lang tayo, parang di ba? So that's very dangerous, and it even connects to that yung unang mo kanina, Manny, about NATO. Yung NATO question na yun, it's related to aggression. It's related to war. In the event of war, all of these alliances will come together. That's the context of that NATO question. Kaya sinabi ko yung mag-unite yun. Kasi sa ngayon, wala pa, di ba? Kasi wala pa namang giyera Pero kung magka-giyera, what do you think will happen? Countries will need to choose side, right? Kanino ka ba? Dito ka sa panig ng China o dito ka sa kabila? Yun yung mag-unite ngayon ng mga lahat na alliances within the region. So that will be the NATO-like alliance that I'm talking about. It will unite because of the war.
Mhm. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for listening and watching us. No, so I'd like to invite you to join next month's podcast of the Asia Pacific Insights, and we'll talk about more defense issues affecting the Philippines and the region. So good night and happy weekend.
Happy weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manny.
Thank you.
Rodney.
Thank you, Manny.